We are absolutely drowning in a sea of noise, an endless scroll of perfect, polished, professional, and completely invisible content. But what if there was a way to actually break through all of that? Not by being louder, but by being different. Today, we're going to dive deep into a methodology that really challenges the core assumptions of modern marketing. This is the story of how to finally be seen in a world that is designed to make you blend in.
Just let that sink in for a second. All that work, all the budget, the strict brand guidelines, it all leads to this perfectly crafted ad that looks exactly like what your customer expects to see. And because it's expected, it's ignored. It's not that it isn't good. The problem is it's too good. It's too professional, too polished. You see, in your quest for perfection, you've accidentally become a master of camouflage.
So how do we break that camouflage? Well, that's the journey we're going on today, and we're going to break it down into 6 parts. We'll start by pulling back the curtain on the illusion that traps so many brands. Then we'll look at the history, what actually happened that made this new approach so necessary. From there, we'll build the engine, piece by piece, that's designed to cut through all that noise. We'll get into the psychology of why this stuff works, how you can actually do it, and what it all means. This is way more than just a marketing strategy. This is the making of a true disruption strategy.
All right, every great journey starts with understanding the map. And on the map of modern marketing, there is a hidden trap, this beautiful lie that so many of us fall for without ever even knowing it. We call it the professionalism illusion. So on one side, you have everything we were ever taught in Marketing 101, right? Professionalism builds trust. High production value is what matters. Match the look and feel of the platform. I mean, it all sounds correct. These are the rules we learned. But then you have the other side, the cold, hard, neurological reality of the world we live in now. By following those rules, you become predictable. And the human brain, which is this incredible efficiency machine, is hardwired to ignore anything that's predictable. It just filters you out. You're not just losing a click. You're not even registering as a thing in their brain. You've just become part of the wallpaper. And that right there brings us to the central paradox we're dealing with. The professionalism illusion is this belief that the better and more polished you look, the more effective you're going to be. But in the crowded look-alike world of our digital feeds, the truth is the complete opposite. Perfection has become a pattern, a really beautiful, high-res, perfectly color-graded pattern that's so common now, it's basically invisible. Our brains are pattern-ignoring machines. So your beautiful on-brand ad isn't a signal anymore. It's just more static. And you can't sell something to a brain that has already decided you don't even exist. Okay, so how did we get here? How on earth did perfection become the enemy? Because, it wasn't always like this. There was a time when high quality really was a differentiator. To understand why that all changed, we need to hop in the time machine for a minute and look at this huge, recent shift in our digital world, a shift we call the Great Aesthetic Collapse.
Yeah, this timeline pretty much tells the entire story. Back in the early 2020s, if you had a big budget, you had a distinct look. High-quality production was a real leg up on the competition. But then, this tidal wave of AI tools just crashed onto the scene and made perfect, cheap, and easy for everyone. Suddenly, anyone could generate a flawless image, a slick design, for basically nothing. This created what we call the aesthetic event horizon. Think about it like this. When every single coffee shop has perfect latte art and cool brick walls, those things just stop being special. The baseline for good got so high that it became the new mediocre. And the result? Our brains adapted. We developed a kind of biological blindness to this new, perfect, and totally boring visual world. And the data was brutal. Even the biggest brands saw their click-through rates just fall off a cliff. And out of the rubble of this aesthetic collapse, a new rule of the game started to emerge. When everyone can be perfect, perfection is no longer the goal. The only real advantage left isn't to be more beautiful, it's to be more different. The only thing that actually cuts through is dissonance. Something that feels a little bit off, something that just doesn't quite belong. The smartest people in the game stopped chasing trends and started engineering what you might call visual sabotage. So, if the old way of doing things is broken, what do we replace it with? Well, the answer isn't a better creative idea or a bigger ad spend. It's a system. It's an engine designed specifically to generate that valuable dissonance we were just talking about. It's a way to turn visual sabotage into a science, and we call it the Neural Saliency Engine. Now, this engine runs on a really clear 4-stage circuit. Think of it like a repeatable system for creating what we call pattern break efficiency. First, you audit the environment to understand the background noise. Second, you identify and actually name the dominant pattern that you need to break. Third, you inject a deliberate inversion, a visual break. And finally, you build a logic bridge, connecting that moment of surprise to your core message. So let's break down each stage. Stage 1 is all about reconnaissance. But you're not just looking at your competitors, you are immersing yourself in the actual feed your customer scrolls through every single day. The memes, the vacation photos, the other ads. You have to get a feel for the aesthetic frequency of their world. What does their visual wallpaper look like? What are the common colors and fonts they see 1,000 times a day? Because that wallpaper, that is your enemy. Stage 2 is about getting specific. You can't fight a nameless enemy. You have to identify and then label the dominant pattern. Is everything dark and minimalist with sharp lines? Okay, that's clean SAS dark mode. Is it all soft, airy, and pink with gentle curves? That's vibrant wellness pastel. By giving the pattern a name, you turn this vague feeling into a concrete target you can actually aim at. Stage 3, this is the fun part. This is the act of creative rebellion. This is where you inject the inversion. Your goal is to create what we call an ocular itch, a visual that's so out of place that the brain can't just passively scroll past it. It has to stop and figure out what it's looking at. So if the baseline is perfect 3D renders, your inversion might be a rough hand-drawn sketch. If the baseline is a polished user interface, your inversion is chaotic, glitchy movement. You are intentionally creating a visual puzzle that the mind feels compelled to solve. And finally, stage 4 is where you turn that attention into actual interest. This is the logic bridge, and it's absolutely crucial. The visual shock is what stops the scroll, but that moment of attention you've earned is tiny, a fraction of a second. In that little window, the disruption has to logically connect to the promise you're making. The weirdness can't just be for weirdness' sake. It has to be relevant. It has to make sense in the context of your offer, creating that aha moment for the viewer, where they suddenly get why you broke the pattern in the first place. Now, this all sounds pretty cool in theory, but to really get it, we need to go deeper. We need to understand the fundamental, hardwired code in our brains that makes this entire engine actually work. Why does our brain even care if a pattern is broken? Well, the answer lies in our brain's survival code. It's a really simple question, isn't it? But the answer takes us deep into the very architecture of how we perceive the world around us. This isn't just some marketing trick. It's a fundamental part of our evolutionary design. So let's just ask it again. Why does breaking the pattern even work? The first piece of this puzzle is a classic idea from psychology, the von Restorff effect. Basically, it just says that an object that's noticeably different from all the other objects around it, an outlier, is way more likely to be noticed and remembered. It's the reason you remember the one red apple in a bowl of green ones, or the one person wearing a bright yellow coat in a sea of black umbrellas. In a world of visual sameness, your ad has to be that red apple. And this isn't just about memory. This is about survival. Seriously, just imagine our ancestors out on the savannah. That endless sea of tall, waving grass is a pattern. It's predictable, so the brain learns to just filter it out to save energy. But a sudden break in that pattern, a patch of grass moving the wrong way, a flash of a different color, that could be a predator. Noticing that break, that dissonance, that was literally the difference between life and death. Your ad, by breaking the pattern of the feed, is triggering that same ancient, powerful, and totally involuntary survival reflex. You are forcing the brain to stop and look. The second, and honestly maybe even more powerful reason this works is something called predictive processing. See, modern neuroscience tells us that the brain isn't just a passive camera, just taking in information. No, it's an active, relentless prediction machine. As you're scrolling through your feed, your brain is constantly guessing, okay, based on the last 100 things I saw, the next one is probably a slick tech ad, then a food picture, then a video. It's building a mental model of what to expect, and it does this to make processing the world faster and more efficient. So what happens when your ad shows up and it's a weird hand-drawn sketch right in the middle of all that polished perfection? The brain's prediction fails. Big time. This mismatch between what it expected and what it actually got creates something called a prediction error. And if there's one thing the brain absolutely cannot stand, it's being wrong. It's like a cognitive alarm bell that goes off saying, warning, the world is not what you thought it was. Investigate this immediately. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The brain's response to that prediction error isn't anger or frustration. It's curiosity, and it actually gets a chemical reward for it. When that error happens, the brain feels compelled to investigate. It diverts precious mental energy to figure out this new, unexpected piece of data. And in doing that, it releases a small burst of dopamine, the chemical of reward and motivation. So you're not just grabbing their attention, you are literally giving the user's brain a tiny, satisfying little prize for paying attention to you. It's a neurological loop that makes your ad not just visible, but actually compelling.
Okay, so we've covered the theory, the history, the deep psychology. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. How do you actually build your own inversion? This is the practical framework for intentional, strategic, visual sabotage. This is where you take back control.
This table is basically your cheat sheet, and the process is actually really simple. In that first column, you identify the dominant pattern you found in your native audit. In the second, you pick out one specific element of that pattern. Then, in the third column, you engineer its direct opposite. So let's take an example. The feed is full of clean, dark mode designs with modern sans serif fonts. That's your pattern. The element you isolate is the font. So your inversion is to use a traditional, classic serif font. It's a small change, but it is just enough to create that crucial ocular itch. It signals a completely different philosophy, a different approach, all within a single letter. It's a system. Find the rule and then break it on purpose. And this, right here, becomes your new creative rule. It's a simple but incredibly powerful test for every single thing you make. Look at your ad. Now look at the feed where it's going to live. Does it fit in? Does it feel like it belongs there? If the answer is yes, you have a problem. In this new world, it is so much better to be weird and noticed than to be professional and completely ignored.
All right, let's bring this all home. What's the ultimate takeaway here? After digging into the illusion, the history, the engine, the psychology, and the application, what is the core insight? Because this isn't just a bunch of tactics. It's a fundamental shift in how we need to think about communication and attention in the 21st century. At its very core, this is about understanding what the human brain is desperately searching for in a world of infinite information. I mean, we are drowning in noise, and we are looking for a signal. By intentionally breaking the visual pattern, you're sending a powerful non-verbal message to the brain. You're signaling, pay attention. This is different, this matters. And this isn't just some philosophical idea. It has a direct, measurable, and often dramatic impact on your bottom line. The math is simple and it's undeniable. When you get higher, more efficient attention from pattern disruption, it leads to better engagement, which in turn leads to lower customer acquisition costs. A 10% reduction in your CAC might not sound like a huge deal, but for a growing business, that can be the difference between stagnating and scaling. You spend less to get more, all because you took the time to understand the neurology of attention. In the end, this whole approach teaches us a really profound lesson, one that goes way beyond just marketing. Growth isn't linear, it's learned. It comes from learning how attention actually works, learning what patterns you need to break, and learning how to build that bridge from your surprising idea to your actual value. And that leaves us with this one final thought. For far too long, marketing has been all about pushing messages, pushing promotions, pushing people through a funnel. But this new model, it's about pulling. By creating a compelling, unignorable signal, you pull people toward you. You make them want to investigate, to understand, to see the value you're offering. You don't just capture a click, you earn their curiosity. And in the economy of attention, curiosity is the only currency that really matters.